Welcome, everyone. This is Matt Hardy, Program Director for Planning and Performance Management at AASHTO. And I want to welcome everybody to webinar 47 of our Transportation Asset Management webinar series that's been sponsored by FHWA and AASHTO, I think, for the past 8 or 9 years. We are closing in on number 50, the Diamond Jubilee, whatever we might call it, but we're going to do a big celebration for number 50. What I do want to say is that, so this is number 47, but this is kicking off sort of a subset of webinars that we are doing called a mini series. The purpose of the mini series is to take a deeper dive into the topic of improving the next TAMP. And as many of you know, if you're from a state DOT, your TAMPs, an updated TAMP, is going to be due in 2022, I think. It varies when you're going to have to do that. So I would check with either Steve Gay or check with your division office in terms of the specific date of when that's due. So we're going to be delivering these mini-series webinars more frequently in order to build momentum and increase engagement, so about one a month. And you can sort of see on the right side of the slide there, the brochure that we have. I will be uploading that brochure to the handouts area of GoToWebinar so that you can download it and register for the next webinars in our mini series. You can also go to the TAM portal, tam-portal.com, and register for them as well. So the next 3 in the mini series will be held on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Wednesdays in February. The topics are improving the financial plan, improving the life cycle planning and management, and then finally improving risk management and resiliency. The final session, taking a look at TAM maturity levels from FHWA's 2019 TAMP reviews, will be scheduled shortly. That was going to happen today, but we had to make some changes. So back in October, our last webinar highlighted some of the findings and insights of a recent 7-part FHWA TAM case study series. If you missed it, I would encourage you to look it up on the AASHTO TAM portal. Again, not to sound like a broken record, it's tam-portal.com. There you will find more information on the overall webinar series. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but visit tam-portal.com, click TAM events in the main menu. And also, I just want to give you a preview that we are making some major changes to the TAM portal. Those will be forthcoming in January. That's our plan, to make a big announcement, and we are better integrating all of the sort of the performance management websites so that they're better linked and integrated with each other. Look for more information about that later on. At the TAM portal, you can register for upcoming webinars that are scheduled, and you will find archives of previous webinars. As well as links to video and slides from today's webinar will be posted to that site. I'm sure that's going to be one of the first questions that I have to answer, so hopefully that's answered that one. As always, if you have any suggestions on future webinar topics or have questions for the presenters during today's webinar, please submit your comments or questions using the webinars or GoToWebinar's Q&A functionality. We can see those and we will address them. And we will answer your questions as best we can throughout the webinar using that functionality. A big part of today's webinar is going to be polling. That's how we're going to create the audience engagement. We're going to be using a service called Mentimeter, and we want to sort of test this out real quick just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it and everybody's prepared for it. In the chat area, I have entered the code. All you have to do is go to menti, MENTI.com, and enter in the code 2619722. That's 2619722. That's the code we are using for all of today's questions, and we're going to sort of try something new today with the Q&A using Mentimeter. It's going to be sort of a rapid fire type polling, so be prepared for that. We're going to move kind of quickly through it. So let's sort of test this out real quick just to make sure people are comfortable with this and kind of see what response rate we're going to be getting for the polling question. So the first question that we have here, just to sort of test it, is when do you predict that your agency will be entirely back in the office? and you have 5 different options already back at the office, I wish, in the next 3 months, hopefully, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, or never. So give you all a minute to sort of look at that. Hopefully you understand how to use Menti, Mentimeter. Again, the code is 20261972. We have about 28 people responding so far. Oh, there we go, 41. All right, it looks like people are pretty sure about, we have 21 respondents saying in the next 12 months, and we have 5, interestingly, saying never. So perhaps that's more of a permanent work from home type arrangement. Anyways, so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using Menti. If you have any comments about some of the more specific questions that we're going to be asking, please include those in the Q&A functionality or the chat area of GoToWebinar. That way we can capture them. So as we go through some of the questions, if you have something sort of unique to say about your state or your locality or something like that, enter it into the questions or the chat and we can capture that. So I think that we have that tested out. Again, I want to thank you. Thanks to everybody for participating today. And now I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Steve Gay from FHWA for a welcome on behalf of our co-sponsor, Federal Highway Administration. Steve, all yours.
Thank you so much there, Matt. It's always a pleasure doing these. So we are slowly approaching our 50th webinar. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. FHWA is a proud sponsor of this webinar series in cooperation with AASHTO. The main objective of this series is to share practical, useful, and timely information with the asset management community. And that's exactly what today's webinar is all about. This is an important topic, and we think this mini-series will be useful and informative. You know, you all heard me say for 2020, let's advance asset management one step further. Now it's coming down to, I'm thinking forward to the 2022 TAMPs. That's why we're doing this mini-series. How can you learn and grow in your organization, get others involved to advance that state of the practice? How to get those next TAMPs more comprehensive. And we're trying to address that, provide a tool to help you do that. The next cycle of TAMP development is here. The agencies need to figure out how they will develop the next TAMP. How will you build on what you have already accomplished? And at the same time, how can you identify and improve the areas that will really advance TAM in your agency? This webinar series is designed to help answer those questions and to provide you with some of the knowledge, inspiration, and capacity to build a better TAMP. You know, if you see more inspirational people than those presenting today, I think we're going to try to get you there. We'll be continuing the series today with an interactive session. We are hoping that you will help shape the agenda for the future. I'm happy to see so many of you returning from previous webinars in the mini-series and future ones. I think you will enjoy today's discussion, and I hope you all learn a lot this afternoon. I'm certainly looking forward to it. You know, one other item, you know, I always got to somehow refer back to a regulation, just because. Was it 23 CFR 515.19? There's something about agencies. It's recommended that agencies do a self-assessment of their processes and see what can be improved. Hey, I think this helps you do that, and I strongly recommend you doing that before you get the next TAMP going. At this point, let me turn it over to Yana. Thank you all.
Thanks, Steve. The purpose of the webinar series is to share lessons learned, ideas, and knowledge with the asset management community. For this webinar, the primary learning objectives are building working knowledge of key concepts and definitions relevant to the transportation asset management plans and plan development, beginning to apply this knowledge in order to answer the following questions. What opportunities exist to strengthen TAMP development to improve the next TAMP? What benefits can my agency expect by undertaking TAMP improvements? What are key lessons learned from the first round of TAMP development that can help improve the next TAM? And again, of course, to share lessons learned, ideas, and knowledge. For the agenda today, we'll kick off the webinar with a three-part introduction. William Johnson on special assignment to federal highways from Colorado DOT will get us started with an overview of the benefits and importance of improving your TAM. Next, Matt Halbrecht, Transportation Asset Management Administrator at Iowa DOT and Chair of the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management, will share some observations on improving the next TAMPs from an AASHTO perspective. Then Anne-Marie McDonnell of the Connecticut DOT Asset Management Group will speak to the state DOT outlook on approaches to TAMP improvements, as well as the benefits to TAM at the agency. And then after our presentations, we'll move into a series of live polls and facilitated discussion that will take us through to the final wrap up. And so in terms of the facilitated discussions, we're going to ask you to make your comments, ask questions using the Q&A function of the GoToWebinar menu bar. And then Matt Hardy will read them and we'll have a dialogue with this panel. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to William.
Thank you, Hiana. Just a couple of bullet points about why TAM is important, as well as some random anecdotes about why I believe TAM is important. And so if you look at these bullet points here, it says TAMP is an enabler for advancing TAM maturity. And what I would add to that is really your TAMP memorializes where you're at any certain stage in both developing and implementing your asset management program. It gives you an understanding of what your state of good repair your assets are in right now, as well as the ability to document where you forecast them to be based upon the other elements within your TAM. And ideally, you're looking for a solid link between the performance and the investment decisions that you make. And you document that within your TAM. More or less, that saying is your TAMP is your game plan. We all know that when it comes to transportation, you end up spending money, you deliver a project, but TAMP, your asset management plan, really gives you that framework for documenting and describing, here is my asset, here is what I want to do to it, this is the performance I want to get to, and furthermore, here's how much it's going to cost me to get there. It gives you an opportunity to look at the state of your data, as well as any improvements that you can make into your data there. In an ideal world, we'd have all the data all the time in real time, but that's not the world we live in right now. We're limited to the data, but framing it within context of your TAMP allows you to look at it and to ask more intelligent questions about your data. Do you need more frequent data collection? Do you need to change the methodology or technology behind your data collection? Further, are there more advanced analysis methodologies that you can use for your data? Last one on TAMP enabling is it really gives you that framework for describing what decisions you make on your assets, who's making those decisions, really establishing the, if you're familiar with the data value chain, matching up your decisions that you can make based on the data to here's my individual data elements supporting those decisions. It does that. Last is we're all looking for more mature TAMPs. We want to advance the practice. That could mean that you're looking for greater asset performance or more available resources for your assets. Your TAMP can do that. When it comes to establishing your game plan, there is nothing better than having something written that should more money become available or should less money occur, you have your game plan and you know what to do and you can put that in front of decision makers. Also, it gives you the ability to really deliver on those agency goals and objectives. You state them out. Here's what we're trying to do. It gives you that form to communicate that in a universal way amongst stakeholders and beneficiaries. You have your risk and resilience. Hopefully we'll get more questions and responses on that. And the last one is better ability to get the resources you need for your assets. Again, your TAMP is that communication device for that. Last thing that I'd add is, why is your improving your TAMP important? Well, it's for the beneficiaries of the system. It's for the traveling public. That's why we do things. It's not necessarily to look at data. It's to make the best decision given the data and to spend the money as wisely as we can on behalf of the beneficiaries, the traveling public. And I'm going to go ahead and stop and I'll hand it off. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Very well said. It's definitely important to keep those end users in mind, and the assets are not just there for their assets' sake, but to serve a purpose for the public, and that's an important perspective to maintain, I think. Now I'm going to talk just a few moments about the AASHTO perspective, and I think everyone knows what AASHTO is, but just as a reminder, it's our association of the state DOTs. So this is the voice of the DOTs. We collaborate through AASHTO as DOTs to raise issues and work in collaboration with one another so that we can have a community to help us all improve our practices and help us share best practices. I've been very fortunate through my involvement with AASHTO to learn a lot from many of the folks on this call and folks that have gone before, and feel like that it's been a huge benefit to Iowa DOT to be involved with this community, and appreciate everyone's involvement. I want to talk just a few moments about a few of the things that are available in partnership with our sister committee on the TRB side, the Transportation Research Board side. Our committee has been extremely successful in getting asset management research funded and completed. We've had a tremendous involvement from our volunteers within the AASHTO community to support that research, help raise its importance within the research process to get it funded, and then serving on panels and helping to promote that research as it's been completed. It's been a very useful resource for our community, and I think one that we're looking to continue to lift up and to help folks connect with that research as it's been completed. And sometimes there's so much to look at that it becomes a challenge to kind of figure out where to get the best answer. And that's where we've been trying to put together events like conferences, peer exchanges, workshops, webinars to help keep that community knit together and help folks learn from one another and to share ideas and information that maybe they might have gleaned from a research report or somewhere else that can be of value. and through the AASHTO TAM portal, which Matt Hardy talked about earlier, tam-portal.com is a great spot to kind of keep all those resources and to have kind of a one-stop location. And I would encourage everyone again to, if you have anything that you've created in your state, please share it with the community. I know I've learned a lot. I see my colleague Anne Marie here. There are ideas that we've been looking to borrow from Connecticut DOT and from many of the other DOTs and other, not just DOTs, but we also have examples from the transit community, from other nations, from all kinds of local agencies that have been very useful and helpful to us as we've been thinking about how to make asset management practice improve, or how to help asset management practice improve within our state. And then we also do a lot with trying to look at how we can support our community, looking at surveys, questionnaires, focus groups that can help us better understand the needs of the community and hopefully connect you all with the resources that you need to be successful. So we really want to make it easier for everyone in the transportation community to do better by collaborating, working together, and then also by helping to connect with those resources that we've been so successful in getting created. And we have a tremendous body of knowledge through the consultant community that we work with, and all of the experts that are throughout our various agencies, and a lot of great rich information that I think you'll see as we talk here today, that there are going to be opportunities for us to connect to some of those resources to help us improve our asset management practice in the future. So that's kind of what we're looking to hear from today. What are the resources that we can help you connect with, and what's going to add the greatest value? And so I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Anne-Marie, and thank you all for attending today.
Thanks, Matt. As Matt said, I'm Anne-Marie McDonald with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I've been with the Connecticut DOT for over 33 years with a background in pavement management and research. So this continuous improvement process is near and dear to where I've spent my career, and I'm excited to see us employing that. As the Vice Chair of AASHTO with Matt, as he mentioned, it really is a pleasure to all work together on this. And I think from the DOT perspective, to identify and really acknowledge that TAM is a continuous improvement process. And sometimes on budget items, we'll say we have a TAM, and they said, I thought we already did that, as if you went down to Home Depot and bought one, right? And that's not what the implementation is. And it's about putting into practices that make us do a better job. And sometimes those are little steps at a time, and that's that continuous improvement that's necessary. And it does keep going. And so that's where William talked about the maturity level. So acknowledging it as a continuous improvement process is really important, just as in manufacturing. Every organization can improve. And it's always easy to see the improvement that others need. And sometimes it can be a sensitive and difficult thing when you're working across your agency. Of course, we want to be more efficient. Of course, we want to make better decisions. And that organization, a lot of times in my own organization, when we're going towards data-driven, it's really crossing into that automation of data. And so that's a challenge. But just recognize everybody can improve. And in continuous improvement processes, we really can't do everything. So identifying and prioritizing what continuous improvement opportunities you want to capitalize. Perhaps it's based on the return of investment. Perhaps it's based on just the historical need or what people would like to see. In our TAMP, we actually have a chapter where we outline what we plan to do, and we go back and revisit that so that we have a prioritization process. And then Matt talked about sharing best practices and lessons learned. And I'm going to throw that out there, that if you tried something and it didn't work, I want to know that, because as agencies, we're not in competition. We all need to use the best, we only have limited resources, limited staff, and we want to focus on things that we can make work. And that's true on the highway side. And we coordinate the TAM for transit at our state together. Different states do it different ways. We're doing fact sheets on both of those programs, and we're learning from each other with that, and as well as all of you. So if there's something that you used from another state, let them know, because they can tell their leadership and it helps support their programs. So with that, that's my state DOT perspective, but as AASHTO and TRB, this is a fabulous community, and working together to see where we go next and how do we improve how we employ TAM. Okay, back to Yana.
All right, thanks, Anne-Marie. And if the other panelists would come on. So we are now going to move on to the polls section. This will be just like the practice poll that Matt led earlier. So we're trying a different model from our traditional webinar where we have 3 to 4 presentations. Instead, the body of this webinar is going to be conducting polls with you about improving your TAMP, and then we'll comment on the results. And we're all going to see on the screen the results as you do your Menti poll. And if you have comments, if you have clarifications, that you want to share, just put that into the Q&A function, and Matt's going to be monitoring that and reading that out for us, and we'll get started. All right. So So let's go to the first poll. Remember, just go to the menti.com site on your phone, tablet, or computer and enter the code 2619722. And then as we get the polls, we'll see the results on the page. So the first poll, you're already looking at it, is what part of the TAMP do you want to improve the most? So, and then the categories we have listed come from the TAM Guide 3. And so that's kind of the framework that AASHTO has adopted moving forward. And we put the other section if you want to, if what you want to improve is not listed in a way you think is sufficient, just click on the other and you can add what that other is. And if you're not with an agency that has a TAMP, kind of use the agency you know best. So for instance, if you're at an MPO, use your state DOT. If you're a consultant, maybe a client that you work with the most. If you're federal highways, the agency you work with most, and base your answer on what you know of that agency that develops a TAMP.
And Hiana, can I cut in here really quick?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So two things, in case you missed the Menti code, it's up at the top. Matt has also posted it into the chat box. There was one question that was asked earlier from Namat. It says, hi, what time frame interval do you recommend for data collection? A general response to that is if it has to do with NHS, interstate pavement or bridge, it's in the regulation. I'll point to Steve for that. If it's for other assets, there are a couple of NCHRP documents. One is for ancillary assets. Another one is TOMI, which is tunnels. There's a couple other that come to mind, but I can't remember the titles, that give recommendations on the frequency or periodicity of data collection. I would implore you to reference those, but also it's point back to how often you have to make decisions about it and what decisions do those need to be. And I think you'll find at least annually is how often for a lot of assets you'll want to collect. So, Fiona, back to you.
Okay, yeah, so open it up. Are we surprised that risk management is first followed closely by investment planning?
Yeah, a little bit surprised. I think, you know, risk management's been one of those topics that has seemed like it's been a bit of a hot topic among the conferences that we've had the last few asset management conferences. So I'm not too shocked to see that, but I do say that it seems like, at least in my agency, it's a lot more interesting to me and the asset management people than it is to any of our executives or you know, the folks in leadership. So I think it'd be interesting to kind of see what everyone else is doing with risk management.
Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, Matt, you're muted.
Sorry for the state DOT folks out there that want more information about risk management. We do have a subcommittee on risk management that's chaired by Gene Wallace and the co-chair Nathan Lee from Utah DOT. So you might want to see about getting involved in that subcommittee.
All right. Let's move on to question 2.
All right, that's me. So question number 2, what part of the TAMP helps your agency the most? So you have 100 points and you can distribute those among the 2, 4, 6, sort of 8 options here. So TAM, policies, goals and objectives, asset inventory and condition, lifecycle planning and management, predicted asset conditions, investment plan, risk management, financial plan, and other. So it's the same same options as question number 1, but we're just trying to figure out what part helps your agency the most as opposed to which you want to improve the most. And you have 100 points and you can distribute those how you want to. You could put 100 points on the financial plan and 0 on the other one, so you can distribute them equally among all 8. So we'll give this one a few more minutes just because it's a little more of a complex question to try to answer. But right now we have asset inventory and condition, leading the way.
You know, one thing I would kind of chime in here, you kind of made the point earlier on the previous slide, which had the same categories, that this matched up, these categories matched up with the TAM guide. And that was something that I neglected to mention in my comments earlier. I hope everyone is familiar with the digital TAM guide, but if you if you're not, I would encourage you to head over to the TAM portal, or you can actually just search on tamguide.com, and that will bring you to the AASHTO digital TAM guide, which was just released this past calendar year here in 2020. And that is just a fantastic resource with a lot of great information to help everyone with the next iteration of your asset management plan. So, you know, between the TAM portal and many resources that have been contributed there and the TAM guide, you have some fantastic resources there in addition to what Federal Highway has put out and others that are available. But I encourage you to look at those resources as potentially helping you with whatever it is that you're looking to improve with your TAMP in this next iteration.
You know, it's kind of interesting on the first one, because we could only pick one, and with this, how much it helps us with asset inventory and condition. We're challenged with adding additional assets. How much and to what level of detail for additional assets do we do with asset inventory and condition? So,
Anne-Marie, the way I'm interpreting this, that's different is the first question was really looking forward to what you want to do. And I think this question hits more what you have done that has impact. And so it's more aligned with your maturity level. And I would guess that in the future, if you ask this question, the asset inventory line will reduce and some of the other lines will increase as agencies get more mature and those areas have impact for their agencies.
I would also add, when it comes to, you know, the majority of the responses being towards asset inventory and condition, the Asset Management Guide, the Institute of Asset Management, Australia Road says, if anything you have is data. If you're doing asset management, that's where you start, is at the data. So it's good people are seeing that as just the basic foundation of asset management.
All right, let's move on to question 3. Oops.
All right. Where are additional resources for the TAMP most needed? Is there policies or about these other topics? And again, you have percentages. Where are additional resources for the TAMP most needed?
Right, so you have 100 points again to distribute. So additional resources would be things like guidance, trainings, peer exchanges, practice examples. Those are the kinds of resources. It's actually interesting to see that, you know, depending on the question, you know, we're seeing shifts on the importance of these same categories.
I'd be curious, anyone who is saying other, if you could type into the chat pod, like what is the other? Not that there aren't others. I just am very curious what folks would want to see in addition to the categories that are listed here.
I would see one additional resource would be like the performance gap analysis, and a little bit more information about what does a performance gap analysis mean. Is it something as simple as here we are, here's where we want to be, here's the delta, or are there more specific analytical tools that can really be used to leverage. Given the delta, here are some strategies, either based on condition or finance, that could be recommended.
Yeah, and that particular one, William, kind of brings up another item that I think has been kind of interesting to think about, which is, I think often in that performance gap analysis, we think about it from an asset condition performance, but there are other elements of performance as well in terms of, you know, the safety, the system reliability. You know, there's other ways of thinking about performance that kind of go beyond that asset condition that I think you could also include in that type of thinking. And so, you know, that may not be where a lot of, and again, that may kind of go back to the maturity question, it may not be where we start, but as we mature, it may be something for us to consider, sort of how do we think about performance in a more comprehensive perspective.
And it looks like Shannon responded. And an important one, I'm sorry, Sharon, workforce training is what was put down as other. And it's interesting that we missed that, because I think that that's one of the points of this webinar, is given how much change we've seen, not just with asset management, but in the personnel responsible for asset management and the broad reach that it has through the organization. Workforce training, yes, is an important one. Emily Burns pointed out data and systems integration within the implementation plan. Great one.
And I think that, you know, what are the resources? Here are the things that we're thinking that are supporting the TAMP, but there's a lot more that supports the TAMP in order to make it work.
There will be some question on training later, so maybe we'll delve even more into it. For those of you who are still doing your distribution, just, you know, finish it up, and when the webinar is over, we will compile all of the results. So you'll be able to see that as the webinar product. Let's move on to question number 4.
All right. And in this question, we're curious to hear about what types of resources are most valuable to you, or do you think will be most valuable to you in updating your TAMP. They include written guidance, such as some of the guides from NCHRP, Federal Highway, webinars like this one, peer exchanges, tools or templates that might be available, examples from other agencies, or other. And if you have other, please don't be shy about letting us know what the others might include.
Matt Hardy emails.
That's a pretty good one.
Right?
I'm
Meetings
really
with Steve, right?
Yeah.
It's more the Matt Hardy emails where the meeting date and link have changed 10 times.
Stop it. Life is complicated. I will say, as we're waiting for people to respond, the AASHTO, so the AASHTO implementation guide that we started with the NCHRP project that Spy Pond was the PI on. So the digital version was released this past year. We have now balloted and finalized the print version, or the PDF version, and I'm happy to report that that'll be the Christmas present or end of year present for everybody. So all the states, I think in the next couple days, will be transmitted an electronic version of it. And then if you're from the private sector, you can buy a version of it. And if you're from one of the local DOTs or city or something like that, just send me an email and I'll get you a copy. If you want that more sort of PDF hard copy version, that I know some of us, I'm still kind of like that with textbooks and everything. I want that sort of textbook version that I can kind of thumb through. So state DOTs, you each get access to it. And if you're from a consulting firm, please just buy a version, help sustain, be a sustaining member of AASHTO. And if you're from a local or a city DOT or something like that, public agency, send me an email and I will get you a copy. Don't tell anybody that.
There'll be raffle prizes in the future too, right?
Absolutely, yes. At that, in fact, at the TAM committee meeting, I think coming up in January, on January 8th or whatever, we'll have a raffle prize for a PDF version.
All right. All right, let's move on to question 5.
How much are you planning to improve your next TAM? This goes back to, yeah, first one was the first one. Now that we have a couple of years of data, a couple of years of implementation, you put it into practice. What have you noticed from it? What do you plan on improving about? Or is you just looking to refresh the data, refresh the targets, and call it a 4-year?
I know, William, you and I have had the conversation and others. You know, a lot of states now have their management systems up and running. A lot were getting new systems on board. Maybe you set your targets before you did the analysis. Now you're looking at those numbers. I think there's a real good question. No maturity with life cycle planning and risk.
Mm-hmm. Steve, are you surprised by the results, or is this kind of what you would have expected?
But not much change. Maybe those were the Cadillacs on Mercedes out there. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about the other. What, if you don't mind putting that in the box, what that means. In the Q&A, Mara had asked a question. Could the information from this be used to bolster our research efforts? I'm going to say absolutely. Not just that, but there's a reason that these webinars are public. It includes multiple stakeholders, so your DOTs from the state. Hopefully, we have some MPO people on there. I know that you yourself, you're a consultant, so our planning partners in consultancies use this information, let it guide you in the services that you're both wanting to add for your clients, the DOTs as well as DOTs. Feel free to use this information, communicate with each other.
Just one other item. As I read this, I thought of it earlier when Anne Marie was making her comments. You're asking, how much are you planning to improve or change in your next TAMP? Is how widely has it been read within your department and other owners, and have you received much feedback? That may be beneficial to get that feedback. That may help answer that question. Maybe there's not much change. They've really done a lot of that already. It really doesn't need much change. But it's a good opportunity to see and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And just quickly, Steve, I don't know if you want to answer this or if I take it on. Jim Porball had said for the other, they plan on using the consumer reports version of the analysis that was led by FHWA Law 52 TAMPs to help them prioritize, define, streamline, simplify the things that they're going to be improved upon. I don't think we really talked about that earlier on. Do you want to mention it?
I'll mention it quick. It's kind of marketing for our future webinar. Federal Highway undertook a study, looked at the 2019 TAMP, and we had an independent consultant review all the TAMPs based on the AASHTO Asset Management Guide and the NCHRP product, the TAM Gap Analysis Tool. And I'm at this point, I guess I'll say in middle of January, we plan to provide reports in a consumer's reports type format, 2 pages front and back of states with asset management practices, and I'll say how mature they are. And it's a tool. It's not used for certification. It's not used for consistency determination. And how could they be? They aren't even done yet, okay? But it is a tool for you to use in your department when you look in the mirror and saying, this is what these consultants felt about our practices. I'll say one thing up front. It is certainly subjective, okay? I'm looking at Matt Holbrook here. He and I may come up with different opinions on something. Doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong, but this is what this independent consultant thought of, and you may want to look at it. So
I'd like
that'll
to,
be the webinar that will be scheduled in the January, February time frame part of the series. In fact, William Johnson may be one of the lead presenters in that particular webinar.
I wanted to follow up on what Steve mentioned about getting feedback. And we've been finding, sometimes people will come up to you, and often that's negative feedback where they'll say, I got to tell you about this piece. But actually deliberately putting it into your annual cycle about how to get that feedback. So on this last consistency, before we start the next cycle, we're meeting with each of our 7 asset stewards. And by creating that opportunity and seeking that feedback, we're hearing things from them now about functional changes in their operations that we may not have been aware of, or positive feedback that will be needed in the next TAMP, and it's better to hear about it now than a year from now. So just wanted to add that in about the feedback cycle.
Thanks.
I
Let's
know,
move
I
on
always
to the next. Oh,
Yeah, let's make a quick comment, Yana. How much you plan on improving your next TAMP? And I always look at it this way. The next one's in 2022, which is around the corner. But if it isn't improved in the 2022 TAMP, then the next one's 2026. That seems so far off.
yeah.
Why not try to improve it now? Sorry, Yana.
All right. Voice of encouragement, right? Let's move on to the next question.
So the next question is, what are your greatest challenges for improving your next TAMP? So that's really a nice way of saying, hey, what's your problem? But is it understanding of TAM agency-wide and their buy-in to the processes? Is it about data availability, quality, timeliness, management systems, workforce, meaning staffing, meeting regulatory requirements? And once again, we have the other category. And if you have something other, there might be one participant that just clicks other every time. Just please put it in the chat box. Because if we identify these challenges, maybe somebody else has the solution, or we can really focus on those. In my state, the next TAMP will not be as big of a workforce issue as the one after that, because we have projected a mass exodus right after the next TAMP. So I know different states are in different situations with that. Any other panelists have input on any of these? Or chat?
Well, it's not surprising to me to see agency-wide understanding and buy-in as the #1 item. I mean, when we talk in our community, I think the big issue that we hear over and over again is on implementation of asset management, how to integrate asset management into our organizations. I think that everyone kind of understands the basic principles of a lot of the nuts and bolts, like how to do an asset inventory and that kind of thing. It's really kind of how do we make this part of our culture and how we do business. And not to say that we've solved all those other problems, but I think the one that folks have found very challenging is that integration piece, and so or implementation piece. So it's not surprising at all for me to see that listed here, and I think that'll continue to be a hot topic, particularly as we mature and try to look at, getting. I think in some cases we're feeling like we're making ground on things like asset data collection and management systems and so forth. This buy-in continues to be an ongoing issue.
And for us, that data availability, it is it's a different equation when you're talking about pavements and bridges versus some of those other less mature assets that we're really finding. Once we get some data on those, it makes a big difference on investing and realizing where we need to do that. A real challenge to us is drainage in that area, because it's just such a large network. Okay.
All right.
Numbers are in.
Yeah. Number 7.
What national level actions should be prioritized to support improving your next TAMP?
So these are actions that AASHTO can take to prioritize research funding, for instance. These are actions that federal highways can take. Things you might do through TRB.
Yeah, you've everything there from the case study type examples to guidance, how-to trainings, peer exchanges. You know, I'm really excited as more people use the new AASHTO Asset Management Guide.
Mm-hmm.
So are y'all seeing results? I have like, it's showing up as 0. Okay.
So Perry, okay, I think hopefully the refresh will show it.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
More guides.
On that note, I'll simply say Federal Highway is working on guidance type documents, and they're dealing with things like how the relationship between short-term targets, long-term state of good repair goals, and the whole TAM, TPM, and performance-based planning issue. Those things should be coming out in early 2021.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move to question 8. Go ahead and complete the responses, participants, but we'll.
All right, question number 8 has to do with COVID. How will COVID impact, how will COVID impact your TAM program and your next TAMP? You can select all. So you have a significant reduction in funding for TAM, moderate reduction in funding for TAM, minor reduction, more funding for TAM, add new risks to the risk register, other. So hopefully you're not saying both significant and minor reduction. If you want to peel back the onion on this one, we were talking about this, I think, either yesterday or the day before. We just said, hey, here's an approach. So we're trying something new with this one, and it's modeled off after something that I'll give all credit to that Mayor Campbell did with an NCHRP project on Monday. They did a 2-minute drill on integrating resilience into the planning process, and they had a similar approach. I thought went really well. So we're trying to mirror that here as well. So interestingly, 0 people are saying more funding for TAM.
So
I guess not surprised.
If you just don't know, would that be other or not?
I would say if people are selecting other, use either the chat functionality and we can announce it, or use the question to kind of say what your other is.
Perry, if you're seeing the other that people have entered, you could also just share it with us too.
Sure. So far, no new responses there.
Okay.
All right.
I see a question from Niles about data collection disruption. I think that's a good one. I think, yeah, that definitely has been something that's been a topic, in particular. One thing that I'm really interested in kind of seeing how it develops is the traffic counts. What's going to end up happening with that? We do a cycle of traffic counts in our state. Are we going to end up with a quarter of our state, because we do a 4-year rotation? Are we going to end up with a quarter of our state that's got lower traffic counts, and how do we adjust? I don't know. There's a lot of interesting questions there that I think
Yeah. Yeah.
So we hit the magic number of 45. That's what we're trying to go for.
Yeah.
We're trying to get, once we have 45, I think we try to move on.
Yeah.
So this should be
All
a quick
right.
and easy answer. So are you using successful practices of other agencies to improve your next TAMP? Extensively, sometimes not at all, other?
Perry, you might need to refresh. We're not seeing the results. There we
Oh,
go.
sometimes. And
Mhm.
maybe you're using them and making them even better. So we'll have to check out what you've done with those. Okay, we're up to 44.
All right.
40,
Let's.
ding ding.
Mhm.
This may be another fairly quick one. Is you're thinking about, and maybe this might be premature, but for those of you that are thinking ahead, how are you planning to handle your TAMP revisions? Are you going to do it in-house using consultants? You maybe not decided yet, or other? Once again, if you have an other, type it in. It might be helpful if you do put an other in the Q&A pod, if you could put like which question number you're relating it to so that we can kind of refer back to that. So if, in other words, if it's, you just maybe put like Q10 other, something like that, that would help kind of us to identify which other you're commenting on.
Matt, I like you employing continuous improvement process right in our webinar.
Just in time, right?
I'll just point out that if you saw my son in the background, he's taking the sewing machine upstairs to go sew something. So.
Oh.
Cool.
Who taught him how to sew? School or?
Not me, mom.
Yeah, talented family.
Mom and
Yeah.
nanny.
He's making your Christmas presents.
Mhm.
We're at 45. Ding.
All right. Let's move on.
All right. Has your agency employed new technology for field data collection of inventory and condition since the last TAM? So new technology, I'm not sure if anybody's still out there using paper and pencil or water cups to measure roughness or grade of things, but think about also if you're now using consultant services more, outsourcing, and or if you're building up your LiDAR system or starting a LiDAR program.
This could
Okay.
include in your field apps on your maintenance and data side. Some states are moving to some technology with their maintenance systems too.
Yeah, we're starting to use some drones in bridge inspection. I don't think that we're alone in that, but that's definitely not something we were doing 4 years ago or 2 years ago.
So then would you include that in your TAMP? Or would you just say we have condition data and keep that outside of the TAMP?
Well, I mean, it just influences the condition data, or it's related to the condition data in bridge that you were forecasting our bridge condition. So I don't think I would call it out as a specific enhancement, but it certainly, you know, I think would be one example of technology.
All right, let's move on to the next question, which is your agency considering adding additional assets in your next TAMP? So another quick one. So mainly no, but decent number of yeses. Enough that group could be a future webinar of which assets.
I'd be curious.
Go ahead, Matt.
For those that are saying yes, I'm curious to know which assets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For those that are saying no, I'm curious as to why.
Well, and what about the scenario where maybe you're going beyond the NHS? Like you're still going to just do pavements and bridges, but instead of just the NHS, you might go beyond that. That might be another, I would consider that to be additional assets. anyway.
Mhm.
Or if you're
Yeah.
managing them in-house for your own operations, but not necessarily putting it into the commitment of the federal TAMP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still a process improvement, and there's pros and cons to that, right?
Mhm.
I see in the Q&A.
Let's go to the next question. Yes.
Mhm.
So so back to that one in the Q&A, we have Peter Jenkins saying geotechnical and Jim Porbauer from Idaho saying possibly consider having TAMP apply to the entire, I assume SHS, the state highway system, not just the national highway system.
Mhm.
Okay, where are you seeking training to increase your agency's capabilities to build your TAM? Setting TAM policies, goals, objectives, asset data management, life cycle planning, management systems, investment planning, including target setting, multi-objective trade-off analysis, risk management and resiliency, financial planning, including asset valuation, other.
Perry, the results aren't showing up.
Asset valuation. Yeah, the asset valuation one's always an interesting one.
I believe there's an NCHRP project that's ongoing
Yeah.
right now on that exact topic.
Yeah. I know. I believe it was under 5 states used that, clearly in the TAMP that influenced this investment strategies, but it was under 5.
So we have the multi-objective trade-off analysis up there, or decision analysis. I just want to promote that, that there was an NCHRP research report, and then through the TPM pooled fund, we have some training available that's free to all the state DOTs. If you go to training.transportation.org, you can access that. And if you're from the consulting firm, again, consider being a sustaining member of AASHTO and paying for the training. But I think it's a pretty good sort of a web-based training course based upon the NCHRP research.
Yep, and the tool itself is at multiobjective.org, I believe. You can get it from the TPM portal.
Yeah.
Multiobjective.org for the MODAT tool. It's a nice way to do some what if, kind of see how you might want to use that.
And we also have that there's an NCHRP effort on life cycle planning and management.
Yeah, we've had a few reports on that. And then also the risk management is another one that we're doing some work on. We have promoted some research this year through the AASHTO committee that we hope to get funded on corridor-based risk management.
And for those, sorry, Matt, we'll just ping off of each other for the risk management. I know that FHWA, Daniel Federa over at FHWA, if a state DOT is interested in risk management training, he is offering up some. So if your agency wants some sort of, I wouldn't say formal NHI training, but it's a half-day risk management training, he is offering that up. You can contact me and I can put you in contact with him. But that was discussed at the subcommittee on risk management meeting this past Monday.
In Matt's, could someone put in the chat box what the training sites are again, please?
I'll add, all the NHI asset management courses have recently been updated and all available now virtually. So there is virtual presentation. So they're available. If having it presented in your state, if the money funding it is the issue, just let me know.
All right, let's move on to question 14.
Are you using established standards for your TAM program? Established standards means, are you looking at what others have done to give you a sort of a jump start, a leg up, some inertia, really looking at the body of knowledge and building off of that for your next TAM? And again, I'd say with the others, if you don't mind in the chat, help us get an understanding of what those other things are that exist out there.
Looks like most people are using the TAM guides, the AASHTO guides.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Very exciting that we have the new version coming out. And another kind of quick plug, we're going to be having an NCHRP project that'll be kicking off hopefully fairly soon here, that's going to be looking to add additional content, case studies, etc., to that digital TAM guide that I talked about earlier. And so as you're thinking about doing your asset management plan revisions, please keep that in mind. If there's specific things that we're going to be looking to canvass all the states and look for great examples that we can include in the guide. And so just keep that in mind, and please share those if there are anything as you're working on your next asset management plan that you want to highlight in your state, or that you think is a good practice that you've seen elsewhere. That will be very informative and useful for us to try to document through the TAM guide. We're trying to make that a living document that we think will hopefully help our community well into the future, and will continue to be updated and refreshed with additional content to make it relevant as things change in the future.
All right, why don't we move on to question 15?
So the question here is, do you plan to increase your coordination with your statewide long-range transportation plan or your freight plan in your next asset management plan? And I guess that the question sort of assumes that there's room to grow. Maybe some of you have already got it completely figured out and totally licked this problem. I guess if you have, please put your silver bullet in the other category and mention that. But I know at least for us, that's an area that we're really working on to try to look at how we can better knit those plans together.
Yeah, looks like the majority are. Good sign.
Good to see, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to question number 16.
All right, number 16, dealing with MPOs or planning friends. How do you plan to work with your MPOs for your next TAMP? So collaboratively, where the MPOs are providing you with their information for the parts of the NHS that they oversee, and TAMP-related decisions about the NHS are made together. A mix of collaboration and the state DOT making decisions. The MPOs will provide their information, and the state will integrate that information into the TAMP without collaboration. The state will do the work and provide the information to the MPOs. I'm hoping for the number 8, if that could increase a little bit more. Number 9, a little higher.
Oh, yeah, it's jumping.
Well, at least nobody's admitting that they're not going to do any collaboration.
Yeah.
Well, I think that choice, the state will do the work and provide the information to MPOs, is kind of not collaborating, right?
It could be a matter of interpretation of what these answers mean now that I think about it.
Right.
And I guess this one is focused on the MPOs. I can't remember if we have a question about locals like other state DOTs, but I saw Emily Burns is on from Seattle, and I know that working collaboratively with local DOT, city, county is probably important as well, not just the MPOs from that planning perspective.
Yeah, we don't have a question about locals.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Emily.
I would say though, for Emily or any other locals, if you could put into the chat, what's your desired level of collaboration? And desired meaning that you could be like, yeah, well, let the DOT do everything, to you want to be more involved.
And Tammy Haas and Peter Jenkins both made comments. It's tough when your MPOs don't collect any of the NHS data. They don't have the management systems to kind of do it, or the locals have a difficult time doing this type of work. So definitely each situation is probably unique.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, let's move on to 17. is your approach to working with the MPOs different from your last TAM? So, so think about how you worked with your MPOs or not worked with them, and then are you planning to change that process?
And it's possible you don't know yet, because you got to see, how much you're swimming upstream, and then see how that ties together.
Yeah, we finished the coordination, the TAM coordination with MPO's synthesis project that I think the AASHTO committee kind of prioritized with the TRB committee, and it did show that the majority of the agencies just relied on the state to do the work, mainly because they didn't have the capabilities in their own MPO to be able to do the analysis like Tammy says.
Yeah, and particularly for the smaller MPOs, the non-TMA MPOs, I think it's just a resource issue, or can be significantly constrained as a resource issue.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an element that for some MPOs, their focus is more on the kind of additional capacity rather than the stewardship of the existing assets, and so that asset management question can get a little bit, doesn't quite have a home in some MPO.
Yeah, maybe this is a topic that will become more kind of active maybe in a year or so, into the future, hopefully short-term future.
Right.
Right. Let's move.
Yeah, Tammy Haas, I'm not sure if y'all saw this, from New Mexico, said that the past year, all 5 of their officers have changed at their MPO, so it'll be more of an educational process rather than a collaboration process.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, a good point for us to look into.
Yeah.
I offer that teaching them how to collaborate could be part of that education process. Now's your chance, Tammy, to mold them to what you need them to be.
All right, let's move on to question 18.
So question 18 is, again, with the MPOs, are you doing anything with MPOs related to risk and resiliency? And we'll see that question here. This one, MPOs come in all different shapes and sizes, and in fact, levels of sophistication. So there's probably things at the MPO level that we can learn certainly on resiliency, depending on where those MPOs are. And something in this area, it made me think one of our best collaborations with locals and public works in New England is often town-based, is through our tech transfer center, because we can have our own staff be on the agenda or be a participant, and sitting in the room for a day together, that's a great opportunity. So I'm going to pursue with our T-Squared Center, maybe there's some things in their next year's curriculum.
All right, I think let's move on to the next question and continue to answer those who haven't. And we'll go to question 19. So we're away from the MPOs and we're looking back at the agency that's developing the TAMP.
Yes. Do you plan to update
Steve?
your risk register or risk management section?
I guess I'll ask Steve, isn't that a requirement or not?
Yes, you should be reevaluating your risk register. Maybe all the numbers will end up the same, but I would expect hit the refresh button and take a look at it and see how it plays out. I know many states had, you know, a day retreat or meeting where they were developing this and rating it. I would expect the same thing this time.
No, and that's why it's nice at Mentimeter. It is anonymous, so it's just good to know.
Yeah. and I would think there's a lot more information about risk out there now, not just from Federal Highway, but AASHTO through the NPHRP studies, etc. There's a lot more information in the AASHTO committee structure. There's a lot more. So I think there's a lot more knowledge out there in the whole issue of resiliency.
Let's move on to question 20.
All right, question number 20. How are you using your TAMP's risk register? You can select all, one, or as many as you want. They're integrated into your investment decision-making process. Oh, so I see others. So again, if you typed other, if you want to include a little answer about that in the questions, we can talk about that and respond to it and capture some information. Second one, part of your asset valuation process, for example, lowering risk increases asset value. Third, integrated into your project development process. Fourth, other. Looks like other is winning out. We probably need a little bit more information about this.
Yeah, I would say with the other, if you could put just some insights into the chat there. I got a feeling that the answer would be quite haven't figured that out yet. How do you use your risk register? But let us know.
Yeah, as one of the organizers, I'm actually not able to type a Q&A, I don't think. So I will actually offer, because I'll unmask myself and say I did say other. And that's kind of it, William. I think we don't entirely know yet still how we're going to be using that risk register. We've used it to kind of help us monitor risks, and we've had ongoing conversations about that. But it's hard to draw a direct line between these other choices and those activities.
I think Todd Shields agrees with you. Niles says, haven't had the opportunity to use it. Well, if you think 2020 was bad, Niles, it could always get worse. And good thing you have a risk register that you can look at and leverage. Keep your fingers crossed that you don't have to have the opportunity to use it. Laura says integration is a work in progress. We aren't there yet. And Jim also agrees, quite haven't figured it out yet. So.
All right, why don't we move on to question 21?
Let's see, do you have TAM governance established in your agency? What this means is, do you have the roles, responsibilities, who makes the decisions understood for your TAM process? Who's doing what? Why are they doing it? Have you got that figured out? And that really deals with not just the implementation question, but the development part of that is when it comes to changes within your next TAMP, who's doing that? How are you doing
it? I think a good follow-up on this question for the future is, what is in your governance would be interesting to find out. How have you documented roles and responsibilities, and how do you update when something changes? Things like that would be, I think, interesting to share across agencies.
Yeah, I think the other thing about that, Hyana, that I think could be interesting is to kind of look at it from a level of a maturity perspective too, because I would say that in our agency we have TAM governance that we've implemented, but as we grow and mature, I think that we may need to look at other structures that we haven't had that maybe would cause me to say no to that question. So that I think that evolves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What you're saying is continuously improves.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Hopefully.
So,
And I
but
don't
you know,
think governance is same as policy. It can or may not be.
I mean, a key part of governance is the documentation so that it's communicated. So what's the frequency of updating when you're continuously improving, right? That's a policy decision. Let's move on to question 22. And 22 is, do you have any programs and methods for TAM knowledge management? This is a question really related to many agencies that are experiencing like heavy turnover of staff and the need to transfer knowledge on an ongoing basis, or agencies that have retirement incentives that get set up and all of a sudden you've lost 20% of your group who've been working on things. William, you had some thoughts about the whole turnover problem in an agency and the need for knowledge management.
Yeah, what I say is that, at least when it comes to TRB, NCHRP, AASHTO, even the TAM ETG, we're all familiar with each other, and it seems like we've been around a lot. But what I've seen is when Steve and I engage the states, either through peer exchanges or the quarterly regional calls, this year we've seen anywhere from like 20-25% turnover in the staff that are responsible for asset management, building the asset management plan. And there's a lot of new virtual faces. And so when it comes to knowledge management, I think the biggest thing you should fear is that your TAMP is it's not necessarily getting more advanced, that it's not maturing, that you're still starting from scratch because the people involved in it don't have that basic knowledge, not just of asset management, but how your department approaches asset management. And so how do you maintain those things?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on for one. We'll have one more question before we turn it back to Matt Hardy to close us out on the webinar.
It's kind of related, but is it the question gets at, is staffing a major consideration when you're undertaking a TAM improvement? So how do you think you're going to approach the TAMP improvements with your staff, existing staff?
Right, so I think, underlying this is, do you, for instance, if you have lost staff or you don't have the knowledge in your staff to take on something, do you hold off on making an improvement as a result?
The other thing I'd add here is, do you have leadership or an executive director that, for one reason or another is really strong or not so strong when it comes to asset management? That could have a huge effect on the organization in your team.
True. Yep. Yeah, I think, what I was going to say, kind of linking this question and the previous one together, I would say that having a strong TAM governance process, I think, really helps, because you're by its nature, through a governance process, going to be engaging a broader group of people to make your organization more resilient. That's also going to embed it more across your agency and make it harder for leadership changes to be disruptive to it. So I think I've seen, at least in our organization, we've had a number of some turnover in some fairly key positions, and I think we've weathered it relatively well because we have a lot of people who know what's going on. It's not all kind of vested in one person, and so it helps us to grow those future leaders, cross-pollinate. I think that can be a powerful way to help you know, ameliorate some of these issues with turnover and staffing.
All right, let's wrap this up, and thank you everyone for going along and providing us your input. Matt Hardy.
All right. Yes. So again, as Hannah said, thanks everyone. We tried something different today. Interested in what your feedback is on the use of the sort of rapid fire approach to some of these Menti questions. I think that we collected some good information. So I think we'll be able to use it. And again, just to reiterate, we will make this available on the TAM portal at tam-portal.com. Everybody together, tam-portal.com. So we again hope to see you in the next series of our sort of mini series webinars on improving your TAMP. These will take place after TRB, so we know that January 2021 is virtual TRB month. It's been declared, I think, by Congress. So in February, these will be on the first, second, and third Wednesdays in February. Again, the topics are improving the financial plan, improving lifecycle planning and management, and then finally improving risk management and resiliency. You can download a PDF flyer in the handouts area of GoToWebinar if you want more information, but you can also go to, that's right, tam-portal.com, and you can register for these. So again, we're aiming for a more frequent schedule so that we can kind of keep the conversation going and start to build some momentum. And we're just looking to get that final webinar on the calendar now, talking about TAM maturity levels from the 2019 TAMP reviews. And I think that'll be a great one. And finally, just a reminder, for more information, you can always visit the AASHTO TAM portal, tam-portal.com. So with that, thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful end of the year, whatever religion, whatever you celebrate. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all that good stuff. Happy New Year. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time. We'll probably see you at TRB, and then we will see you in February with a whole other webinar series. So thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you to all the panelists.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, be well.